And we'll try this again. Did the record?
Yep. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so we're recording. All righty. Good morning, fellas. Here we are, week 2 of our virtual Moot Men meeting. And thanks for braving these new waters, guys. And as we're doing this, I found last week very productive. I've been working on the background trying to learn other features of this Zoom program. And today is going to be primarily some new content. And of course, feel free to just, speak up whenever, just like when we're physically together. Next week, we're going to spend bulk of the time in what's called in Zoom breakout rooms. And I'll have the ability to randomly, either manually or randomly, it'll be random. When I hit breakout rooms, each of you will be put into a subgroup with a few others, depending on how many rooms we create. And you'll have opportunity to discuss the content, the questions that we talk about. And then we'll probably, what we'll do is I'll make a general announcement to all the rooms saying, hey, we're going to get back together in a minute, and then we'll all come back together. So that should be a really fun thing to do next week. So, well, could somebody read on the screen? Our content, our section this morning is chapter 4, 31 through 38. But for background, let's begin reading at verse 25 and then through verse 38. So would somebody read that?
I still can't get the full screen. Can somebody tell me how to get my full screen back?
Upper right-hand corner.
Under speaker view, maybe?
Or
Gallery
speaker view or full screen, yeah.
Yeah, swaps. No, I'm getting the scripture actually.
So you don't see the slide? You don't see that?
No.
I
had it on there, and then I went to get coffee, and I came back, and it was gone.
Upper right-hand corner should be the 4 arrows go in 4 directions. You click it, it should put you back to your full screen.
You guys are really helpful. We're grouping all our knowledge together, and it's helpful.
Hey,
Rob Strauss. Look at Rob Strauss is coming on.
Morning, Rob.
Tatsu, you got it yet?
No.
Hit the escape button. Did it make the screen smaller?
Oh, okay. I'll try it.
And then go back up to the upper right corner.
It just, oh, here. Okay. Yeah, I got her.
Good.
That
Hey,
worked.
Rob.
Hey.
So before we have the reading that you guys have just jumped all over, can everybody see the slide?
Mike,
Yeah.
word to Rob. Rob, move your arrow over your screen. In your lower left-hand corner, you see a mute and a stop video button. Click on the video button. We can see your face.
Now?
Hey,
Okay.
Rabbi, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Good morning.
Hey, Bob's joined us too.
That's a real treat to have you, Rob.
Well, guys, I may have to cut out in a bit here because my wife and I are going to go walking, but I'm with you for now.
Well, okay. Well, good to have
Cool.
you. And
Thanks.
so let's assume everybody can everybody see the screen, the slide?
Yep.
So
All the way to verse 36. Then the pictures cover it at the bottom, but that's okay.
Okay.
Huh. Well, I think that's on whoever said that. I think that would be on your end as far as just.
Yeah, it's just because it's an iPad and it's only showing me and 3 other guys anyway. So I may have to try this next week on my regular computer.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Could somebody read the text, verses 25 through 30?
I'll take it on if you want. The woman said to him, I know the Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ. When that one comes, he will declare all things to us. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. At this point, his disciples came, and they were amazed he'd been speaking with a woman, yet no one said, what do you seek? Or why do you speak with her? So the woman left her water pot, went into the city, and said to the men, come see a man who told me all the things I have done. This is not the Christ, is it? They went out of the city and were coming to him. Meanwhile, the disciples were urging him, saying, Rabbi, eat. But he said to them, I have food to eat you do not know about. So the disciples were saying one to another, no one brought him anything to eat, did he? Jesus said to them, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. Do you not say there are yet 4 months and then comes a harvest? Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, they are ripe for harvest. Already he who reaps is receiving wages, and he who gathers fruit for life eternal, so that he who sows and he who reaps may rejoice together. For in this case, the same is true. One sows, another reaps. I have sent you to reap that for which you have not labored. Others have labored, and you have not, and you have entered into their labor.
All right.
And I
Thank
think
you.
that word is ripe, where it says white here. I'm not mistaken, but I think
Do I have it? Where is that?
is
The fields are,
verse 35.
yeah. They're white. Yeah, you said they're white for harvest. Maybe that's right. I thought it was right, but that's
they
okay.
are white for harvest. Well,
It's the color of the flower,
I'll check that,
white.
Bill.
Okay.
Maybe that's what the fields look like when they're.
So before I flip the screen here, what is your general take on this interaction now that, this whole story has happened? We'll quickly review the story. This wonderful exchange between Jesus and this woman, who in that society would have been kind of a second one down position because she's a woman. She is a Samaritan woman, Jesus being a Jew, she acknowledges that. And then the disciples come onto the scene in verse 31 through 38, and there's this exchange. What are your initial thoughts of this exchange between the disciples and Jesus? Any comments?
Confusion.
Okay, you see confusion. Okay, that's kind of where my mind went with this, Bill, is that way out of left field. Now, remember, this is the diagram of the entire story, verses 1 through 30. And what I have proposed is that you and I, all human beings, we derive at some level of what we call normality. And as we are all aware right now, our normality is being grossly disrupted with what's going on. It's based on this continuum of, because we're in the image of God, we're looking for a happily ever after. In our context, in our Christian framework of thinking, we call this either heaven or the kingdom of God. We're looking for life to be better. We're looking for something better. And I think that that is a universal quality that is stamped within us by God. But where we find ourselves and what dictates where we are on this line is what I call self-imposed constructs. We put ourselves primarily where we are. And that's not entirely true, but for a large extent, we define where we are on this happily ever after because of our self-imposed constructs, our way of thinking. And I think what's supportive of this idea is how Jesus speaks of the kingdom of God. He says that what you are waiting for, people, has arrived in the now, and it's standing right before you. So this, I'm getting this from the language of Jesus. He's not saying to them, do this and do that, be good, and do these things, and someday you're going to get this massive payoff. That is certainly not what he's teaching. He's saying it's right in your midst. the woman at the well went through this process of awakening here, where she says, I mean, she was like brought up to a different level of awareness. You're a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. Why are you talking to me? That's an awakening. Then Jesus draws her into this conversation by changing the physical content that's in the hole, the well, to living water. And then she says, I'm in. Give me the living water. And then at that point, what I call a deconstruction takes place, which must occur. That deconstructions, we have to have our constructs deconstructed, taken apart, in order to get to a point of new clarity. Once we see things in their pieces, then we're able to correlate those pieces. And what that brings is illumination. And the key text here, guys, is she left her water pot. She left her construct to go back and to tell others. That's what we're talking about. And last week we suggested that this idea could be, from John's framework, a way to describe what born again looks like out of chapter 3. You know, there's that there, and this can be maybe one illustration of what this can look like, this new birth, this new illumination that the woman received. So there are 3 responses to Jesus that we've looked at in this chapter. And the first response is the response by the woman, where she abandons her water pot to go and tell others. And this is the outcome of an exchange between Jesus and the woman. That is by far the bulk of this chapter. Secondly, there is a response by that we read this morning. Bill, thank you. The men in the city. It primarily says men, but then it says later in the text, many came out to Jesus. So there could have been women, I'm not sure. But the men in the city, she speaks and says, I've met a person who told me everything that I have done. This is not the Christ, is it? And they leave the city. Notice they leave the city and they move towards Jesus. She abandons her water pots to go tell others. These are actions of life and moving in direction, in belief, and in receiving Christ. Now, in contrast to that, there are the disciples. And these guys are the guys that have walked with him, have been a part of him. They enter the scene and they go into this silent judgment. Why is he talking to this woman? But yet they know enough, they've been hanging around Jesus long enough that they felt fearful in bringing this topic up. And so their concern was social protocol. This is not right. This is not right. So, social protocol. I'm trying to do this without advancing the slide here, touching a button I shouldn't. And then later in the text, they're concerned about, did he get enough to eat? There is, in a sense, they're transposing their need for food onto him. So then the subject, Jesus takes this subject of food and runs with it and points to the fields. And oh man, there's really some graphic language here. So they are definitely, guys, on a different level. You know, we have definitely 2 types of responses to Jesus. This is a reception down here versus this is resistance up here. They don't like what Jesus is doing. They are trying to take care of Jesus. In a sense, they're trying to mother Jesus. Jesus, you're okay, but you're not getting it right in this case. You know, that's, you know, from my perspective. So what we want to focus in on, guys, are this whole thing, this induced new new movement in the text of the disciples and their response. So, why such a disparity? This is the question. Why we see in the text these two examples of belief and reception versus the contrast of the disciples. Well, here we have normality, we have self-imposed constructs, and like every human being, the disciples are working out of these self-imposed constructs. It is not right in their heads for Jesus to be talking to this woman at the well. So that is where they are, and where they are is where they are. Where we are is where we are. We see things as we see see them, and right now where we are in a global situation is being grossly disrupted. How we see is being grossly disrupted. Our normal is being challenged in an amazing and global way, unprecedented way. So what I want to look at is, before we discuss the text, I want to give you 4 facts of how we learn, how we grow, how we become aware. In our language as Christian brothers, we talk about growth in Christ. We may talk about the term transformation in Christ. In other disciplines, they call it growing in awareness or enlightenment or consciousness. It's becoming more and more awake. The reality, I mean, we all know, we've all seen, or maybe have stated, man, that guy is just so unaware. He's just unaware of what is going on or what is around him. He's unaware of the effect he's having on other people. And so you and I are able to identify it, but we have a number of different words that we use to describe it. Well, I'm using the word because this is a common idea where I'm using the term growth. And growth, how you and I generally think of growth. This is what's imposed by our culture, and this very, very much dominates our thinking. We think growth should be on a continuum, steady pace like this. There should be an ascent of life. And as I apply efforts in my life, I'm able to build my life through order, higher degrees of order, to a higher state of predictability. This is what we are all innately striving for, to build predictability through our self-imposed efforts and creating higher degrees of order. Hi, Shirley. You snuck in there. Good to see you, Shirley.
It's Mike. Oh, this
No,
is
you are
incredible.
correct.
Our new, speaking of big changes. huh?
Really?
Wow.
Good
Yeah.
to see you too.
Yeah. Guys, I'm going to cut out now for now. This has already given me some good stuff. I'll be back. Thank you. And bless you guys.
Yeah.
Take care,
for
Rob.
coming,
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks.
Hi, Rob. Bye.
We'll continue on next week. We move very quickly, so we don't.
Yes, I
want
see
to-
that. Okay. Take care. Good to see you all.
Bye, Rob.
Good to see
Yeah,
you.
so this is what we would call normal. This is our normal framework of thinking as a culture. And I realize that I'm saying broadly speaking. Now, because of our age and experience in life, we know that that is not exactly true. And that certainly there are truth aspects of it. Of course, a young person wants to build and construct a productive life. And that is good. That is correct. But the reality is life forces enter in our life at some point, several points as of now, and is challenging that normality, that predictability, puts it in disarray, and sometimes brutally. Life forces such as a death, such as a divorce, such as another, some sort of brokenness, some sort of, devastation of some sort. Maybe a low level of anxiousness and moving into depression. It could be psychosomatic. It can be a number of things entering in that life, and somewhere, guys, in men's lives around the age of 35 to 45, 35, we start asking the questions, how in the world did I get here? Why am I here? Well, right now, because of the situation we're in, this has escalated beyond measure to at a global level. Geez, is this really happening? What is happening through the global pandemic virus? But we're experiencing loss. All of us are experiencing loss right now. And the natural tendency in human beings, and this is not wrong, this is, and I think it is because we're in the image of God, is that we try to fix it. We try to fix the situation. We try to fix others. Whatever we can do to fix it in order to regain order, so I can move to a higher state of predictability. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. So what I would like to do, it's 7:30, and so I think what I'm going to do is just introduce this idea, and then we'll hit the four. I've got 4 facts. This is a model that I actually taught about 4 years ago. And this has been extremely helpful to me on how to understand growth and life and development and so forth and transformation. This is how I understand spiritual transformation. This model, I must insist, is not opposed to the typical growth model that I just showed. It's inclusive of, it includes it. That so the way this model works is that the way I understand it, 7 stages. There's actually 7 growth stages. However, this model is in compliance with a much larger way of thinking. And if you were to line up different growth models, some of these stages have 4, or some models have 4, some models have 18, but it's just subdividing the general 7-stage process into smaller pieces or larger pieces. There is a general movement in what transformation looks like. And of course, Jesus Christ is the example of transformed man.
Nancy.
So we're going to just use a 7-stage model. I don't know if we will actually go into the 7 stages, but there's 4 major facts that are true about moving from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so forth. There's a general movement. And if we look at these 4 facts, what we're attempting to do is understand what is going on with the disciples and how they could come barging into a situation such that we have read about in Jesus' exchange with the woman at the well and see and be so out of touch with the reality of what is going on at that time. It's fascinating. And so that's what we're going to look at next week. I said at the beginning we were going to go into breakout groups. We'll probably cover the four facts next week. But before we sign off, guys, I've given you a lot of information, and you've been very patient with me. But are there comments about this before we close?
Well, I'm thinking of Peter getting the revelation that you're the Messiah, Son of the living God, and then Jesus starts talking to him. He had an expectation of what a Messiah was, and then Jesus starts saying, well, we're going to go to Jerusalem, and I'm going to be killed. And Jesus just corrects him. No, you're not. You're out of line and stuff. And that's kind of almost what's happening here. They're coming and says, Jesus, you're going the wrong way.
Right.
And it's my assumption that you talk about deconstruction, that my feeling is the Samaritans in the village, in a sense, had to give something up. But their sense of certainty, I don't think, was as important, as strong to them as the Jews' sense of certainty was. And they don't like the idea. They didn't like the idea, the disciples, of having to veer off the path at all. And Jesus is pulling them that way. The Samaritans kind of went, okay, it's like, what do you have to lose? The more you have to lose, the more you hang on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes other comments. I've been talking the whole time. What about you guys? Any other thoughts?
I think that actually the disciples are actually an example of what we run into a lot in our churches, in that we have some judgment, okay, about how a person should act or how they should be, instead of, being open to them coming to Jesus. So sometimes our desire for normalcy, or for other people to be, in quotes, like us, kind of gets in the way of people coming to Jesus.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
I think this is an example. You showed the slide there of the steady growth on one line. I try and picture that as one line, but it's got little micro losses, for lack of a better word, but where little deconstructions along the line. So that thing actually kind of zigzags up and down as we steadily grow, but we miss the mark, along the way. And I think this story is an example of the disciples growing, but they've missed the mark just momentarily.
Yeah.
And Jesus points that out to them. And I think if we're open to those corrections that Christ is making in our lives, then we continue to grow. But if we don't recognize that we've missed the mark and let Christ bring us back up on that growth line, then we tend to drift down below that line and don't grow like we should.
We stay here, right?
Yeah.
And that corresponds with that other picture of normality. In other words, Jeff, you're reinforcing at least my thoughts on, we self-impose constructs to keep us where we are.
Right.
That's the idea. Yeah. So
I think your idea about transformation is a huge one, and how that's different than just taking on a new, different persona. You start out a certain way, and then as you become enlightened, so to speak, you take on a different persona or a different way of doing something. And if that's not working, you think the world's crumbled. But really, transformation is a little more dynamic than that. I think that you're ready for anything and open to anything. And what Jesus does that's outside of what you think he should be doing wouldn't shock you. But what these guys did was just took on a different coat. They were a certain way before, and now they're a different way, and I'm going to stay this way, and you can't change me. And so they're making changes, but the change is not a dynamic change from within them. It's just it's like another appearance, which I think happens a lot
Yeah.
in Christian growth. You learn a better way of doing it and you think that's the way. And then when someone does something else, you go, well, they're not doing it that way anymore. Something's wrong. It's not wrong. It's dynamic.
And it's continual. It's not a one-time experience. These
It's not.
They're walking. They're disciples of Jesus. They're very aware, but yet at this stage, they're showing unawareness. They're showing what Jeff has pointed out right in here. There's a dip, but it's a growth opportunity. They're in a growth opportunity right here. So.
I think that opportunity aspect of this is something that's easy to miss, in that we try to predict where and when growth will occur. We go on a retreat or a certain book or whatever, but God's not limited to certain methods.
Right. Yeah.
He can use the Samaritans in our lives to teach us certain things, using people and circumstances that we didn't expect.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's very true. It is certainly a journey. And I think that, getting back to Jeff's, comments here, I would say that we would generally say smooth sailing. We want a smooth sailing life. And, life just doesn't work that way. And it's really more like this. And hopefully, as we continue to grow, that release of growth, moving into this position from a down position, has everything to do with letting go and embracing. It's not about trying to reel it in and bring control. That is the human tendency, but that's what keeps us down here.
Hey, Mike, go back to the slide before.
Okay.
The one that has on the left, looking for the happily ever after. There you go.
That one?
Yeah. So Bill was talking about context and expectation. So one, I'm not sure at this juncture in life, are we looking for growth, right? Do we have a need for growth? I know we as men want to fix things. I think maybe we have a need, or especially with this pandemic, has made us think about our mortality, which maybe has awakened a little bit. We really want peace, just let everything be peaceful. And the happily ever after, whether it be here or later. So the expectation of the disciples in following Jesus, they were really looking for, that's probably a long story, but the kingdom of God to show up, right? And Jesus is talking that way. They had a clear mental expectation of where they thought they were going. The woman, on the other hand, has an expectation too. And she says, of course, I know the Messiah is coming. The one who is called the Christ. When he comes, he'll make everything plain to us. Her expectation, what she was looking for. So I don't think the disciples are thinking about their spiritual transformation or spiritual growth.
I would agree with that.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't think the woman is thinking about spiritual transformation, spiritual growth. Actually, neither of them are really playing the religious game, right? Of, I want to be a better person. They lived in a different world, and they were thinking very differently. They were kind of like us now, maybe more in a survival thing. But so I guess, we see nothing's real without a need. And I guess the spiritual journey that we're on our life journey. Like you said, this is another Nicodemus encounter, just with a whole different look. It's very similar. That born again idea, right? Is it's very similar. It's just a different look on that same what maybe Jesus has in mind, and so we're probably more like the disciples, thinking, you know, hey, God's going to show up. Well, I don't know. That would be interesting. What we all think, what we're looking for.
Yeah, what the solution is, how this is going to get fixed. Yeah.
Well, we want to fix things, but you know, at this juncture in my life, I want to fix less and less. Right? And I'm much more awakened to the idea. So now what? What is this all about?
Right.
We watch our friends, Bob, you know, leave us, Charlie, this pandemic, and all of a sudden it kind of jiggles us all to kind of go, huh, what in the world, you know? But anyway, so this really, we're kind of like this woman who goes, what in the world? When the Messiah comes, he'll make everything plain to us.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if the disciples chased her away, you know, when they come back going like, you know, and that's why she dropped her pot and left town, or if she was, you know, going to go back anyway and tell them.
Yeah.
You know, Mike, that's why I like this group, because each of us is on kind of our own path, and we get deconstructed and reconstructed. We find a new guru or Christian mentor to read and get excited about and want to tell everyone else about it. And other people may go in a different direction, or not opposite, but just another path. And I think we are old enough now that we realize that we like to share our experiences, but we certainly don't want to impose them, because it's dawning on us that we're all on an interesting path and unique to each of us.
Right. Yeah.
So Bill, thanks for getting me to read this. This has been really good. Bill talked about N.T. Wright, Simply Jesus. So that's a little side commercial, but you're right. We're on different paths, and
don't get on my path.
Would you like to, for the other guys, would you like to give a short review of, I mean, say any more about the book, just because there might be other guys that might want to read that. So.
Oh, yeah. Bill, do you want to say anything about it, or you want?
Well, it's kind of back there. There's a lot of times I can only point to YouTube, and generally there'll be some sort of a discussion or interview with him about the book, and that probably gives you more information. Otherwise, summing up his book is a little above my pay grade, you know. But all of them are worth reading, and he's Anglican. The Anglican Reformation was different than the European Reformation, so the theology, it's an interesting subtleties, but they're different, and I appreciate that.
So maybe one more thing on this to think about. If Mike, if you go back to the slide, it was, I think, the last slide you were on. Actually, no, sorry, 2 up from that. One more. Well, I mean, either one. Yeah. So maybe something to think about here is that it isn't that they were just off at one point, but that they had missed the big picture. And I think something that helps us in life is to know, here, let me do something here. Let me pick this guy. So basically, the problem we have, you can leave that there, actually, that's a useful, or take it off. But anyway, but really the thing is in life is that if we understand, like, for instance, that here's the goal up here, right? And then we continue to grow. Can you guys see that?
Yeah. Oh, you wizard, you. I see a line up at the top.
Let me make it a little heavier. Yeah. So if we understand that
nice.
it's here, then our growth. If you go to the top, there's a view options at the top. If you drop that down, there's an annotation option, and then you can pick.
Well, we can
color
mess
and-
this up royally. Great.
Yeah, you can write text. Do what Mike's doing. Anyway, stay focused here. But yeah, so if we understand that, then while we still tend to have the jaggedy, this stuff, there's peace in it because we know. And so like with the woman at the well, she says, we know that the Messiah comes, and when he comes, he'll make all things clear. So she's not, you might say, worried about this line down here, right? And the disciples have missed that. And it's when this happens, when you realize, hey, the best I can do is below here, is below me. That's when people get depressed and that sort of thing, and then, but if we understand this, then you don't have that problem. And then your ability to grow in terms of understanding and whatnot is greatly supported by that, by the fact that you have the big picture right, so to speak. So there is a right and a wrong. So like in this case, this being the goal is not correct. Something up here is. And just how we live in that. And somebody said, I forget who said that they probably weren't, I think it was John, was saying that they probably weren't playing the religious thing. But in truth, we all are, whether we like it or not. Unless you define playing the religious thing as pretending. We all live within what we believe. And so what we truly believe, that is not what we say we believe. So if you define it as your religion is what you say you believe, but don't really, that's a different story. But in this case, like the disciples, they had, as we had discussed previously, they had an understanding of, the Old Testament, the Jewish context, all of these things, which should have told them basically the Sermon on the Mount, that the kingdom of God is at hand. And always has been at hand. It's being revealed in a clear and simple path, so to speak, by Christ at this point, by Jesus at this point. But it's always there, and that's the big thing that they're missing. That he comes to at the end when he says, he says to them, "You're waiting for this, but I tell you, the field is already white for harvest. It's already here." And really always has been. And when you miss that, those big key points is when we get our objectives wrong, so to speak. We end up down here. Anyway, that's.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
I think that brings up actually the difference between this and the Nicodemus story, in that this woman actually did, like Mike was saying, was, had established that higher line, or that she was actually building towards that, rather than Nicodemus, who just went away and was it sounded to me actually from reading those scriptures that he went away and he was still not certain. Later on, of course, he understood, but I think in those specific passages that we studied, he didn't really quite understand. He went away puzzled.
Yeah. Well, guys, it's 7:50. Thank you, Totsi and Mike. Mike, by the way, you've got a great radio voice.
Yes.
You really do. I could hear you saying, "And welcome to KVYD, your classic jazz."
Hey, Mike, just a little housekeeping quick. So if you're not talking, you may want to mute your screen. That way, if you're in an environment with other things going on, then we won't hear the background noise.
Yeah, there's a lot of background noise today.
Yeah, so very good, Dick. Yep.
Could we make it I couldn't hear it here for whatever reason, but if there is a background irritation going around, I think it would be helpful to say, "Hey, time out for a minute. We ask somebody to mute their mic?" Especially as we get, because it's better to take care of it, and we can learn rather than being, kind of background irritated by it. So is that agreeable?
Yeah, you can see if you're making noise without knowing it with that little yellow line popping up on the screen.
Yeah. And the other thing is it's generally a good practice if you're not talking just to mute. So if people just make that a habit.
Sounds like a proverb.
Yeah.
I do this all day, every day, so I'm practiced.
So, I'm really conscious of time. At the Moot House, when we're live, we've got our system. We start at 10 minutes to 7 and we're done at 7:30, because it's based on a precedent that was set years ago that people have to get to work. Well, things are changing, but I don't want us to, I would like us to build an environment here where I really look forward to coming every week, and time has a factor. Should we, at the Moot House, we were going 40 minutes. We're now in a new growth stage where we're trying to learn the technology. We're now running on 50 minutes. Should we say to shoot for 45 minutes, 30 minutes?
How about an hour, Mike?
What do you guys think?
How about an hour?
Okay. How do you feel about an hour, being in front of the screen for an hour?
It works for me.
Yeah, it's fine.
And you can always leave. I think last week we had a couple guys just leave, and you can leave at any time. I'm okay with whatever we decide. I just want to make it, I don't want to make it an enduring thing. I want to make it really an enjoyable time. I think it's important that we have the time to share what's going on with us and our reflections on what we're learning. And so I think all of that is important. I would not teach for an hour, 30 minutes at the most, more like 20, but then leave room for this kind of thing. How do you guys feel about an hour? How do you think about the allocation of time, 20 minutes of content at the most, and then discussion? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think with the 20 minutes of you teaching the lesson, Mike, and then just kind of open-end the discussion part up to an hour.
Okay.
I think I learn as much from listening to the other guys as I do from the lesson itself. So I like having an open-ended discussion up to an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the hour good also, but I'm enjoying, or would enjoy also the insight that everybody has on the now, on what's going on right now, even if it's different than the Gospel of John. Just what you're seeing, experiencing, any insights you get as life has changed for some of us, and what you're thinking about it. So it might be two different discussions. It might be the same discussion, but if it is two, I don't think that would be out of line.
Yeah, I think that's very important, is to be able to express what is going on and have a platform to do that. That's what, I think that's what we want to do. So I think, how about if we give each other permission to say, geez, guys, I'd like to share this morning, and just do it at the beginning. Maybe I could start out. Anybody have anything they want to, any updates in your life? Yeah.
Mike, perhaps, I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of getting your teaching as for the foundation for the day, and then we work and talk and chat around it. So then if we want to leave or have to leave, at least we didn't miss what you had, the presentation. And then I want to hang around for all the talking too, but I have to leave. I suppose I'd rather leave the general discussion than have to not catch the presentation.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree too, Mike. You've put time into it. I think we shouldn't cut you short.
Right.
Okay, so I'll plan on starting at about 7:05. Say, let's say the meeting starts at 7 o'clock, and then I'll start. I'll kind of watch the clock. Say, okay, well, let's get started, guys. And then if we're able to cut down that, it's nice. Yeah, I'm on probably as early as 6:30. I'd appreciate I just get on and kind of do the technological stuff. I'm still here working, doing other things. So let's say, 6:45, you guys start showing up, just like you do at the Moot. And we can talk and kind of get caught up then. And then how about 7:05, I start, and then I'll go for, 20 minutes at the most. And then we'll have our group time. And that group time is either going to be, we're going to try these breakout rooms, or we'll try large group, depending on what, I'll just kind of mix it up. So how does that sound, guys?
Sounds good.
That's good.
That's good.
So, Mike, maybe it would be helpful to maybe Michael or somebody that's really familiar with Zoom could give us a little tour. I know somewhere there's a little thing like you could raise your hand, right? Like if we want to ask a question without interrupting you. And I'm not sure.
Let's interrupt. I like interruptions.
Okay.
Let's try to do that. I think that'd be helpful, but just to keep in sync with what we've talked about, John and others. How about if we well, I'm kind of volunteering Mike here because
yeah, I can come in. How about if we start early? How about if I'll come in and be here by 6:30 next week, and I'll give a walkthrough.
I would prefer 6:45 just for my own.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'll still be here at 6:45 because I'm going to stay all the way through 7. But that's fine. 6:45 next week. I'll give a little quick walkthrough of the tool.
That's helpful. Thank you, John, for.
Way to go, Vince.
That was Mike.
Alrighty, guys.
So,
go ahead.
A mechanics question. Does the code and the password, do those stay the same week to week, or are they new every week?
I can answer that. I set up this meeting to be this same ID code. It's a 9-digit code with 3 sets of 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that code, if you go to Zoom and hit join a meeting and you put that 9-digit code in, you will log into this meeting. So I've set that code is active through April 29th. And it's just because I just arbitrarily set it up.
Well, it still requires a go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
At April 29th, of course, our knowledge is going to increase, and we'll then reassign a new code for a new set of meetings.
Yes.
But it'll all be called the same thing.
But you still need the password.
So only if you're joining by way of Zoom. So if you join on your computer, just with the hyperlink that Mike sent out, and Mike has the ability when he set that up to need a code or not need a code, but for most of us, and that's what I would push out, Bill. Now, if you're on an iPad or a phone, I'm not sure, but for those of us on a computer, it's just an easy one. You don't have to do anything. All you got to do is click the hyperlink.
Well, just hang on to the hyperlink. I don't have to. No point sending it out every week if you have it, right?
Right.
You shouldn't have to send it every week, Bill. That was the intent, that the guys should have what they need through April 29th.
Yeah, and the hyperlink worked on the iPad too.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think there's probably an option, and we ought to try again, to put it in your calendar. So it can automatically populate your calendar.
Yeah, when you signed into it, it gave you that option.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So every week, all I do is look at my calendar and then just click.
So to recapture here, the hyperlink was easy. If you want to go through the venue of the Zoom icon or the Zoom application, then you'll need both codes, the meeting code and the password.
Okay, good.
Well, I'm going to be leaving the meeting, guys. It was good to see you all.
Yep. And good to see you. I think we're done. So can we close down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. See
All
you
right.
guys.
Well, thank you guys
week.
thank you guys for everything, participating, and we'll plan on coming back next week. So,
All righty.
all right.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye now.
Love you guys.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I love you too. God bless.
Yeah, that's a good word. I love you too. Good night. Or good afternoon.
guys.
Not good night. Good day.
Goodbye.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye.